So co-working started 2009, was a reaction to a entire economy that kind of had failed a generation and a group of individuals. When we started, companies were minting independence by the thousands, right? I mean, people were being shown the door or people walked out the door because they no longer believed in what that company stood for, or simply where their job was eliminated. Those individuals then suddenly were, kind of unleashed into the streets and had to figure out what to do. People actually had the ability to choose where, when, and how they would work together, and they simply chose to work with people that they knew and liked, right? And so it became a little bit of a mind meld around a new way of thinking, of being, that took hold. What we've noticed over time is that the independent worker, the remote worker, those individuals who really kind of are doing it alone, don't have access to the same kinds of systems that a traditional company would have to offer. That's one of the biggest challenges. Now, a community helps overcome the psyche of that concern and that risk, and I feel safer in the numbers working alongside people. But there is a real fundamental shift that I think is going to happen that's going to impact virtually every aspect of life. It's going to start to impact things like insurance, daycare. The whole work model has fundamentally changed, right? And is in smaller bits nowadays. So I think that the protection for an independent worker is going to continue to be an issue that politicians and local governments are going to have to deal with. But ultimately, I think the private sector is going to resolve, right? I think that there is going to be new solutions and new products, but that's going to require us to change some of the rules of the road. So I think it's actually the interesting moment is yet to happen. What gives me optimism is I work with people every day, entrepreneurs and startups that are creating solutions that governments can't even dream of, and larger regulating bodies can't even dream of. I do agree. I mean, there is skepticism like all around, but I have this eternal faith in people who start and create things. They tend to do it out of their own need at times, right? Certainly there's a goal for something, but there's a lot of business that's doing good while doing good. And that, I think that explosion that these things don't have to be separate, that they actually can be part of a business plan. You combine that with the shifting environment, I just think it's going to be ripe for innovation. Disruption will occur in a lot of places that we had never thought of before. Childcare in the future of work is going to be one of those sticky kind of problems to solve for. We have started doing and delivering some childcare. We started a program called Startup Saturdays, geared towards entrepreneurs and startups that typically don't feel like they belong to the ecosystem, right? They're outside the network. They don't feel like they're in the game of raising the capital and venture capital and seed, and there's a whole language barrier. We've opened the door and said, hey, look, there's a lot of incredible businesses that are out there, but we had to solve a couple things. Most of them have jobs, right? They're working during the daytime. That's how they're surviving, but they have this idea and this thing that they could contribute to our world. B, oftentimes there are children that they are sacrificing their dreams for their children, which is awesome. I have a ton of respect for that, but that stops the dream, right? And then the third part is the network. So we took those three ideas and wrapped them into a Startup Saturday. And so we can provide some childcare during that activity, but it's actually called babysitting, right? Because of all the rules around it, which is challenging. So I think if you look at childcare and daycare and babysitting and this whole idea of a reliable resource being there to watch your child while you're doing your second most important work in the world, right? And I think you're going to have to look at and this might be a bad example, but how Uber destroyed or took on the taxi and the riding model. I think somebody like that is going to take on these kinds of systems and just fundamentally upend them. When, where, and how they get done, I think will be more user-driven than system-driven. Now we still need a lot of protections. I mean, we got to protect the children. We make sure everybody's screened and certified and those kinds of things. But I think it's going to be a bottom-up disruption that's going to change that model. And the reason is it has to. The way that we work and gather and the needs of the new economy are going to drive these kinds of things. They're going to have to shape around the direction that things are headed. Becoming an entrepreneur is a big decision, right? Who should be one, who should not follow that path? I mean, the very definition of entrepreneur is a difficult task, right? And so it is for somebody who has a lot of comfort with ambiguity, has a high degree of risk tolerance, and is willing and actually can see a future that others can't. So I think you have to be really open to new ideas. You have to be continually looking at yourself, the product, and what you're building, and just asking how can it be better or different, and am I on the right approach? That's not easy work, right? And so we don't have any system that really develops that, right? Our education system doesn't do that. It's still on a track that is dated and is producing one type of worker where the world is moving to a different type of working need. So I think individuals find it. Certainly when I started as an entrepreneur, it was not as cool of a term as it is today. Being an entrepreneur means you didn't actually do maybe get the main job your parents wanted you to get, right? It was that place where you could just kind of freely explore some things. I do think that it is becoming more and more of a trend. And I think that's awesome. I think more people are aware of it, exposed to it. However, I do think that the network that's exposed to it is limited. It hasn't become a very diverse place yet. It certainly is trying to become more inclusive. But it's simply, some people just don't have the same network. They don't have the same resources. And that's an issue we have to tackle, right? And really, to really see entrepreneurship have a bigger impact for everyone is to engage more people in that conversation, teach more people, and connect more people. I do think that there is this intersection, and there's a group out of California, Singularity University, spending a lot of time about the convergence of humanity and technology and what's happening. And so if I look into the future and the projects I want to be working on is trying to solve for remaining human-centered, but using technology without letting it take us over. And we're kind of right at that apex. We're moving from, the last 100 years, we've been on an incremental growth with technology. At the point we've hit the iPhone is the point that this has gone exponential. We can't imagine, the rate of change is so fundamental. We haven't even caught up as a culture, social media, its impact, and what does it mean when it's so pervasive? We're only at the very beginning, and it's going at a rate that is, again, exponentially growing. And I think it's got tremendous opportunity to do good. I'm an optimist and a futurist, so I believe in the good that can happen, and yet I'm fully aware of the dangers of that convergence. And I think that we have to think deeply about that, and we have to have responsible leaders who are working on that convergence.